The Outlanders Journey. Tier 1, Level 3. Chapter 1. Bach. You ascend to the top of the platform. Despite the bad fall earlier, you feel secure with Miley and Laurel just beneath you. For the first time, perhaps thanks to that feather spell, your body is light. You're giddy with anticipation. You run your fingers along the rough tree bark as you scale up the rope ladder. According to Mama, much can be determined about a tree by simple touch. Its age, its sturdiness, its connections, and sometimes even its memories. Moss and other foliage have grown into the deep grooves and crevices. This tree has housed many living beings for likely hundreds of years. You've made it. You're here. And soon, you'll see Mama again. Droplets of rain splash onto your head and shoulders, and you lift your chin up to the canopy. You can hear the downpour, but the trees are now protecting you from the worst of the showers. The air is sticky. There's a strange and familiar humidity that seems to be swirling around you, as if attracted to you. Someone shrieks from down below. An older orc woman is vehemently shaking her head, backing away as Errol commands her magical rope to coil around both of their waists. Errol caresses the woman's face and whispers something that momentarily calms her. With no other option, the woman wraps her quivering arms around Errol's neck. The next thing you know, they shoot up past you at breakneck speed, and the woman screams the entire way before disappearing over the platform. A few moments pass, and Errol comes into view again. Standing tall, with one foot extended forward, she hops over the ledge, an arm gripped tightly to the end of the rope as she gracefully floats to the bottom, landing silently feet first. Once she reaches the bottom, she begins massaging her shoulder before calling another person in line. Mock steps forward eagerly, dragging a reluctant rock along. Errol has, in her physicality and posture, a kind of poise and elegance that fills you with an unstated envy, and you, with your fat, sweaty fingers and enormous, bulging shoulders, can never achieve such nimbleness. As you watch her, the heft of your massive body falls upon your shoulders again, and you find yourself staring for far too long before Laurel's call jolts you back to yourself. You continue to climb. Earlier, you also wished to accept a ride to the top with Errol's rope, but Laurel was adamantly against the idea, much to Miley's shared dismay. But perhaps it's better this way anyway, as your weight would likely cause the rope to tear, and you don't want Errol to have to hold you. A gust of wind rattles the ladder, and Laurel curses under her breath. You must be at least 50 feet high right now. The top is just within reach. You raise one hand up over the edge and plant your palm firmly onto the platform. The wood is waterlogged and slippery. There are no banisters. You lift up a leg and set your foot upon the platform, stretching your hamstrings beyond what they're used to. You probably look like a wolf raising its leg to pee. Clumsily and sluggishly, you roll yourself over the top, splashing into a puddle of rainwater. You hear some stifled laughter in the neighboring trees. The Aarakocra are watching you with glee. You push yourself onto your knees and peer over the edge. Miley extends her hand toward you, beaming with delight. Reaching over, you grab her by the waist and pull her up with ease. Though you lack grace and dexterity, you can enable those around you to move safely. Secure in your hold, she giggles, stretching her arms as if she's flying. Meanwhile, Laurel, just below her, is shivering and cussing out the Aarakocra under her breath. She grips the handles so tightly that her knuckles have turned white. "Come on, it's not scary," Miley shouts as you set her down. "You can just cast Featherfall again." She waves impatiently. "Lily, I swear to the gods," says Laurel. You take Laurel by the arm and hoist her up as well, patting her on the back. Then you hug her. With Maya Lee's contagious laughter, you can't help but feel your excitement return as well. You've never experienced the view from this high before. There's a different world up here. You can see much farther ahead and much deeper into the forest. So this is what it's like to be in Aarakocra, looking down on everyone and everything. The ground seems nearly overgrown with tangled, mossy roots, covered in decaying autumn leaves. It's denser here, not just the plant life, but the smell, too. A fresh, crisp scent. The air seems to be teeming with life, with energy. Besides these platforms, everything on the ground level seems to be completely untouched, ruled only by the laws of the earth. You are home. Just a few more days north, and you'll truly be back. Behind you, you finally spot what looks to be a wooden building constructed out of and around the tree trunk. There don't seem to be any windows, and a wide, doorless opening leads inside. Black smoke is rising out of a small chimney. A slanted thatch roof collects the rainwater, flowing down into some sort of metal container on the side. Every nearby tree seems to have multiple platforms, supported by metal braces and rope, and every platform houses one of these small buildings. A gust of wind rushes past you, and in a blur, Errol lands onto the platform soundlessly. The rope uncoils around her and Mock's waists. He takes a deep breath and then shakes the rainwater off his body. Errol points to the opening in the building, instructing him to dry off and warm up inside. Then, after glancing momentarily at you, she leaps down with a tired sigh. On the ground, she hesitantly approaches a cowering, growling rock, his tail tucked between his hind legs. Mock waves down, beckoning his direwolf to come up, and preventing him from biting Errol's hands. Carefully, she coils the rope around his torso. Dura steps in to help as well, lifting him up as he whimpers uncontrollably, flailing about. Laurel rushes in, ushering Maya Lee along. "Come on," she says, tugging on your sleeve, and you nod and comply. Out of the corner of your eyes, you catch sight of a lad from a high platform, staring at only you for some reason, a look of bemusement on her face. You dip your head down and twist your shoulder to fit into the doorway. You're instantly met with the crackling heat of a fireplace. Underneath the scent of smoke is the smell of old, dusty wood. The interior is, to your surprise, much more spacious than you imagined. It seems to be used primarily for storage, filled with graying boxes and barrels that have been pushed aside to accommodate your group. The walls are lined with what appears to be deer hide. Lasha is seated on the floor with a few of the other orcs. Her eyes are closed, praying quietly to herself. Ark is also huddled beside her, hugging his knees and hiding his face in his cloak, a mix of shame and fear in his eyes. Rock is barking and whimpering loudly. You peek outside to find Errol struggling to hold on to the thrashing direwolf as he's raised over the edge. Mock rushes to him, whistling loudly. He grabs at tufts of the wolf's fur, scratching his back vigorously. As soon as Rock's paws touch the floor, he collapses in a lump of shivering black fur. Laurel and Maya Lee sit by the fire, sprawling out their legs and catching their breaths. But you decide to head back out in the rain. She pounds the heel of her hand hard into the side of her neck, and she stretches her shoulders, groaning in pain. Her palms are red, with the markings of the rope embedded deep into her skin. You wave sheepishly at her. "Can I help?" you ask. She blinks at you, surprised. No, I'm fine." She peers over the edge. "Not too many are left, just Leader Dura and a few of the men." "Oh." You don't know if it would be rude to press further. Perhaps you would only ruin her process. "Okay." "You should go inside. You'll catch a cold if you stay out in the rain for too long." Your fingers begin to fidget with the button on your coat. "But That means you'll get sick too. I'll be okay. You take off your coat and offer it to her. Though Laurel helps to clean it for you every day, her magic hasn't been able to remove the smell. She stares at it for a while, then gazes back at you in confusion. Maybe this makes your arm not hurt as much. Oh, thank you. She accepts it hesitantly. She begins to slip it on, and you can already tell that the sleeves are too long, the shoulders are too wide. They dangle lopsidedly over her body. Hot shame rushes up to your face. She opens her arms and glances down at herself, letting out an exasperated laugh. It's very warm, she says. She begins rolling up the sleeves before a realization seems to come over her. She coils the rope around her arms and over the cuffs of your coat. She smiles at you. The extra padding from your sleeves will help. Thank you. You nod. Go back inside. I'll return this soon. And she drops back down. You shuffle into the building. Laurel's eyes are narrowed, following your movement closely. As you sit back down, she says, What was that? What was what? Why did you give her your coat? I thought she might be cold. I wanted to help. Laurel shakes her head. She's fine. Her arms looked hurt. She's friends with a healer. We don't need to worry about her. But she helped us get in the forest. Laurel shrugs. And I saved their lives a few moments ago. Out here, we worry about ourselves. Once we get to the north, I don't reckon we'll be staying much longer with those two anyway. After what's happened, you suppose you shouldn't fault Laurel for wanting to remain distant, but you've gotten used to the Everlight's followers' presence. Despite it all, they seem like genuine people. You nod, warming your hands over the fire. Eventually, everyone is carried up to the platform. By the time Errol and Dura get inside, the rain has turned to a heavy downpour. Errol attempts to wring the water out of your drenched coat, apologizing to you profusely. It's okay, you say. You reach your hand up to accept it, but Laurel intercepts you, taking it instead. She nods once at Errol before turning away dramatically. Errol stands awkwardly, her eyes watching you. But then she lowers her head and saunters over to Ark. Outside, the winds begin to howl, and branches sway against the exterior walls of the building. You feel a small breeze coming in. Amidst the torrent, you catch the sound of flapping wings, followed by a heavy thud. Aled rushes in, dripping wet. Behind her, she releases a woven, rolled-up straw curtain hanging just above the doorway, and it clatters to the ground. She shakes the water out of her head and pulls out a large tome tucked in her arms. I apologize again for our bare-bones equipment here, says Aled. We don't usually receive visitors. Most of us are border guards. She pulls up a chair and plops herself down. But I've made arrangements for your stay. We'll clear out the room once the rain stops so you can sleep as comfortably as possible. Thank you, says Lasha. We've already notified our leaders of your arrival. Until we hear back from them, you'll have to remain here. But I imagine we should get a reply in a day or two. Reply? Asks Dura. They'll let us know their decision. As in, whether or not they'll accept us into the forest? Asks Laurel. The question comes as a surprise to you. Haven't you already been allowed in? Yes. And what happens to us if they decide to reject? Asks Laurel. At this point, we believe that possibility to be low, says Aled. That is all I can say. Laurel scoffs. Aled flips open the book and sets it down on her lap. What we will need from everyone, as part of our records, is each of your names, the purpose of your visit, and where you intend to go as your final destination. She pulls out a pen from her pocket and uncaps it, touching the tip to the page. She peers at each of you, waiting. As we've already stated, says Laurel in a bitter tone, we're here to go back home to the northern region. My sister and I were separated from our families, and so is my friend here. The nomads also need a place to live for the winter, and our Furbolg friend has agreed to let us all stay with the Furbolgs. Aled sighs, scratching at her beak. So, you wish to go northwest? Yes, where the Furbolgs are. She shakes her head. No one is permitted to go there. It takes you a moment to process this. No? Why no? You spot Dura furrowing her brow in confusion as well. What? What do you mean? Says Laurel. Aled turns to you. What is your name? Bok, you answer. She studies your face. You notice a small scar on her beak, a patch of missing feathers on her scalp. How long have you been away from your home? She asks. 7 years, you say. She nods. I see. How old were you 7 years ago? You count on your fingers. 10? You don't remember leaving the northern region 8 years ago? You immediately turn to Laurel, whose eyes go wide with shock. You return your attention to Aled. No? The Furbolgs left the northwestern area 8 years ago, and they haven't returned since. What? Says Laurel. Aled sets down her pen and leans back in her chair. It creaks loudly. I was wondering why a Furbolg was traveling with you to come back here. You have no recollection at all of leaving here? She asks you. You shake your head. Mama and Papa said we live in the north and herd the bison. The bison have been abandoned to roam on their own for years. Some of us moved to the northern region to help manage the population, but we weren't nearly as effective as the Furbolgs. She turns to the orcs. I'm sure you noticed the bison's migration patterns were becoming less predictable. Lasha nods. Yes. Now I suppose we know why. But why did the Furbolgs leave? Says Laurel. And why aren't we allowed to go there? She flips through the tome. She runs her fingers along the pages before she finally stops. It says here that on the 26th day of the 5th month of the year 889, hundreds of Furbolgs were seen entering the western region of Aspen Grove. Guard Zwecki spoke with their leader, who called himself the Overseer of the Plains, and they warned of an incoming disease that will consume the land. Everyone turns to you. Bok, you hear from Laurel in your head. You really don't remember any of this? You picture the decaying bodies of the bison from days ago. The stench, the queasiness in your gut. You realize you've experienced it before. Your body was hot, like it was eating itself alive from the inside. Mama was rocking you back and forth, pleading for Sylvanas to save you. What happened after that, you no longer know. I don't know anymore, you respond. The Northwest, says Aled, has become nearly uninhabitable. You are not the only migrants we've seen coming in. In the last 2 years, almost all of the Aarakocra from the Northwest have also moved. What's happening there? Asks Ark. As of 2 years ago, we discovered that the plants and trees no longer survive the winter. Most of the animals have migrated south and chosen to remain. But beyond that, we do not know. We've sent scouts to investigate, and none have returned. Holy shit, says Laurel under her breath. She turns to Ark. How come you know nothing about this? Ark only shakes his head. The leaders of the southern region are only vaguely aware through our continued correspondence, says Aled, and they have acted unsatisfactorily. I am not surprised that their citizens are not made aware. Do you know where my family went? You ask. She reads through the tome again. According to our records, they were last seen attempting to go to the eastern region. Why the eastern region? says Laurel. Maya Lee gasps. She twists toward you, slapping your knees aggressively. Eehee, she cries. Eehee, remember? Aled stares at Maya Lee, narrowing her eyes. Remember, says Maya Lee. Eehee lives in the eastern region. You said you met her. Who's Eehee? Asks Laurel. The archdruid. You recall the coast, a beach, the tall, gray-haired woman who put her hands on your forehead and hummed a soft melody, instantly quelling the burning in your stomach. It's all coming back to you. It's all making sense. Mama and Papa were there with you. Yeah, you say. I remember. My family was there. So, says Laurel, the Furbolgs are all in the eastern region now? That is the direction the Furbolgs were last seen approaching. Our last recorded sighting of the Furbolgs noted that they were attempting to cross the lake of the Old Father. I will confirm in the notes that they have reached the eastern region. You can feel Mama's presence. She's far. You thought you made it, but it turns out she's still out of reach. Once again, you still have a ways to go. But now you know with absolute certainty where she is. The air rises and swirls around you. She's here. We go east? Asks Dura. How far? Aled nods. You are permitted to go to the eastern region. I suspected that since you wished to stay with the Furbolgs for the winter, you would most likely have to go there anyway. The shortest path to get there will take roughly 20 days of travel by foot, but we recommend that you take a more circular route. This will take at least a month. Why the longer route? Asks Laurel. Instead of answering, she stands and walks to the door, peeling back the curtain. She waves her hand outside and whistles a sharp, short call. Then she sits back down, wiping her drenched hand on her pants. A few moments pass before someone lands once more on the platform. You hear a slow, deliberate walk to the door. A hand pushes the curtain inside. A young eagle-like Aarakocra with brown and white feathers slips in. He's tall and muscular, with a serious look on his face. He stares ahead, back straight, feet together, arms by his side, awaiting orders. This is one of my most trusted scouts, Reka, says Aled. If everything works out with our leaders, he will be escorting you there. We believe that traveling with him is the best way for all of you to reach the eastern region. Why do we need an escort? Asks Errol. Because of the inherent dangers of this journey. She looks to you again, as if trying to gauge if you remember. You're offering to help us get there? Asks Laurel. Yes, but we would like something in exchange. This is, we hope, a mutually beneficial agreement. Agreement? Asks Errol. We have been trying to send representatives to the eastern region as well, with limited success. Most have had to return due to the unpredictability of the journey. Though Reka knows the way, his chances of making it will be improved if he travels with a large group. We need for him to contact the very archdruid that you have named. She turns to you and Maya Lee. We need her to help us figure out what to do about the Northwest. As she stares into your eyes, her face softens with sympathy. We hope that she will be able to heal the land and prevent its spread into our territory. Perhaps, in doing so, your family will be able to return as well. Laurel rubs your back. Her voice enters your head again. I'm so sorry, buddy. Lasha sighs. We have made deals with the Aarakocra before, and you turned your backs on us. Now you wish for us to help you again when it is convenient for you? Aled bows her head. On behalf of the Western region, I apologize sincerely for our disregard for your people. This is not an excuse, but I hope you understand that we are battling the same enemy. You are not battling the elves. You have made a treaty with them. Our way of life is changing, as is our ability to sustain ourselves independently. We pride ourselves as the independent nation of the Aarakocra, but in many ways, we do not have that kind of strength anymore. Our land, both yours and ours, is losing its vitality. As Dura translates, the orcs discuss amongst themselves in Orcish. You can't understand their words, but their body language seems to express both resentment and reluctant compliance. There's a bit of a lull in the conversation, and soon you begin to hear a commotion outside. Someone opens the curtain by a tiny crack, and a single eye peeks inside. "Is it really Coney?" someone whispers. Through the tiny opening, crowding on top of each other in the pouring rain, are dozens of Aarakocra searching inside. "Do you see him?" "I see him," says a hawk-like Aarakocra, pointing. Ark pulls his cloak over his face. Aled snaps her fingers. "What are you doing? Get back to your posts." Immediately, all of the Aarakocra disperse, flying away to the nearby platforms. She shakes her head, sighing deeply. Word travels too quickly here. Errol places a hand on Ark's shoulder. "Can you tell us why we need an escort? What dangers are on the road ahead?" Aled gestures at Rekka. As I mentioned earlier, Rekka is familiar enough with the way there. The primary danger you must be careful not to encounter are the portals to the Feywild. They are less frequent on the western side and at this time of the year, but the risk is still a large enough deterrent that many avoid migrating to the east altogether. I will be forthright when I say that only the truly desperate attempt this journey. Laurel's eyes go wide. Her jaw drops, but she doesn't speak. Aled continues. "This is not information for me to share with outsiders, but if you wish to go there, then you must at least know what you will be getting yourselves into. This is also why we want Rekka to go with you as a group. We would send more of our own, but many of our experienced rangers are unfit to travel due to past attempts." "And you think we'll be able to get there if your experienced scouts have failed?" asks Laurel, in disbelief. "Our only recent success story, as we have now confirmed, is the Furbolgs. It seems that the larger the group, the more likely the chance of survival. Unfortunately, we simply lack the numbers here to send so many people. With your arrival, this is, I believe, an invaluable opportunity for all of us." "What happens if we end up going through a Feywild portal?" asks Errol. "It is best that you avoid the Feywild portal." "But if we do go through?" asks Laurel. She sighs, nodding. "I will tell you the truth as we understand it. Very few who have entered the Feywild have returned. Those who do, they come out with curses and effects that linger for years. In some cases, the effects last for the entirety of their lives. The creatures of the Feywild represent the chaotic nature of birth and life itself. You will be entering a completely new world with different rules and laws, if any. That being said, Rekka is trained enough to know where to avoid during this time. Be sure to follow him and not veer off the proper path." She glances at Laurel and Maya Lee. "We have reason to believe that the Feywild portals also seem to leave the Wood Elves alone, so we hope this will also improve your chances." "I see," says Errol, a hand to her chin. "Many of us are unwell," says Lasha. "You ask us to go on a mission that not even your best scouts could shoulder. You are forcing our hand here." Aled shakes her head. "I do not wish to see it this way." "I'm assuming we can't stay here, right?" asks Laurel. "For a few days, perhaps. But if it is for an entire winter, then we simply do not have the resources to spare." "Wait," says Ark. "What about the southern region?" Errol shakes her head. "The South probably wouldn't know how to handle the nomads. They have the closest ties to New Everlon, and if they find out we're sheltering the nomads, things could get difficult." Aled nods. "Bringing them closer to the enemy's land does not seem wise." "So we're forced to do this then," says Laurel. Will we be safe in East? Asks Dura. If you arrive safely, the Archdruid is not known to turn refugees away. That is, we believe, why the Furbolgs chose to migrate there in the first place. Dura sighs, rubbing her forehead, one hand on her belly. She glances at Lasha, who only solemnly shakes her head. The other orcs stare down at their feet. Okay, says Dura. We say yes. Aled nods, uncapping the pen again. I will make sure our agreement is properly documented in writing. Will you provide us with provisions? Asks Laurel. We're out of food, and our clothes have been badly damaged. We can provide a few additional equipment, but Rekka will be able to supply you all with the food you need. She motions for him to come forward. He steps forward confidently. He pulls out a mistletoe branch from his pouch. Twirling it between his fingers, he chants a quick prayer, and a handful of raspberries pop, one at a time, into his cupped palms. Mock, watching this, scoots closer, marveling at the effects. He stares at his own hands. You will be well provided for in terms of sustenance. Your primary concern will be the weather, as well as avoiding the Feywild. Once we receive notice from our leaders, there is a strong chance they will offer you additional resources. Contacting the Archdruid is, for them, a top priority. That being said, for now, get some rest. We will finalize everything in a few days. One by one, Rekka approaches each of you and drops a magic berry into your hand. Dura, Lasha, and Aled step aside to sign some papers. You examine the thin, bright sheen on the fruit, turning it around in your fingers. You never realized the time you met Ihi was when you left your home. All your scattered memories are starting to fit together. Ihi once told you to eat and grow. Her voice was soothing, like a lullaby. Do not worry about such complicated things. These powers are new and unknown, but they are not to be feared. Your new awakening is a blessing. Change is a blessing. You place the berry on your tongue, closing your mouth. You break through the skin. The berry bursts with a delicately sweet and tart flavor. Something in the air warms around you, ebbing and flowing delicately. A blessing, you repeat. A blessing.